I'd like to call to order the June 3rd, 2008 of the Louisville Planning and Zoning Commission and announce that a quorum is present. Item 2 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the May 6, 2008 meeting. Can they hear me out there? Ooh. Okay. All right. We are in session, and I have item 2, which is approve the meeting minutes from May 6. Do I have any discussions, corrections, or a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Oh, go ahead. Motion from Karen and a second from Jim to approve the minutes from the May 6 meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Minutes are approved. Item 3 on the agenda is consent agenda plats. Item 3A is the amended final plat of Vista Ridge Office Park Addition, lots 1R, 3R, and 4, Block A, a 3.99-acre tract zone light industrial, located on the east side of MacArthur Boulevard between Vista Ridge Mall Drive and FM 3040. And item 3B is the amended final plat of Castle Hills Phase 3, Section B, lots 16R and 23R, Block D, a 1.77-acre tract zone estate townhouse located on the north side of Polzer Road on Lady Devance Lane.
Both of these plats are amending plats, and in fact, with both plats, the purpose of the plat is to simply relocate an internal lot line within the subdivision. So staff is recommending approval. They meet all the requirements of the General Development Ordinance.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff or any discussion on items 3A or 3B? And if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve item 3A and B as presented.
Second.
We have a motion from Karen and a second from Bill to recommend approval of items 3A and 3B. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries on both items. Item 4 is the regular hearing plat. Item 4A, final plat of Castle Hills Windhaven Parkway, Standridge Drive, to Josie Lane, right-of-way dedication, a 10.006-acre tract located south of Business State Highway 121 between Standridge Drive and Josie Lane. David.
I believe Gene has gone back to get our overhead on, but in the meantime, this plat is a plat of the right-of-way for Windhaven Parkway, west of Josie Lane, and extending westward to Castle Hills Phase 6, which has already been final platted. There we go. This plat is simply creating right-of-way for the street. There are no buildable lots associated with this plat. There are two variants. Well, actually, there's one variance, kind of a two-part variance associated with this plat. Typically, the General Development Ordinance would require a street like Windhaven Parkway, which is going to be a 4-lane divided boulevard, to be designed for a 50-mile-an-hour design speed. In most instances, that is not a problem. In this particular case, there's several issues involved, which makes that a little bit difficult. Well, we lost our picture again. But at any rate, this particular section of Windhaven Parkway, which is within the Castle Hills development, is going to be designed, or at least at this point is designed, to move traffic at 35 miles an hour rather than the required 50 miles an hour. The design speed is dictated by the design of the curves along the alignment, And I've got those highlighted in orange, the areas where the curves are a little bit sharper than what would normally be approved for a 50-mile-an-hour design speed. And also for vertical curves, which is basically your hills, valleys, ups, downs, whatever you want to call them. Some of the vertical curves are a little bit steeper or sharper than a normal 50-mile-an-hour design speed. And again, they're designed at a minimum of 35 miles an hour. In this particular case, there are some circumstances which are dictating the design speed of this road. Number one, the property on the north side of Windhaven Parkway has already been sold by Castle Hills to another developer. So in order to make this alignment match a 50-mile-an-hour design speed means that it wouldn't follow the property line that's been established by a previous sale. So the alignment of this road is being somewhat dictated by the fact that there's been a property line already established or a property sale that's occurred. And of course, Castle Hills and the other developer's preference is for Windhaven Parkway, of course, to follow the property line. Another issue involved is that this particular area, which is pretty typical of Castle Hills altogether, has a lot of topography, and in some cases, the topography in this area exceeds 10% grade. And so you've got a lot of up and down and naturally steep topography. In order to design the vertical curves for a 50-mile-an-hour design speed, you would have to cut the hills down considerably, and then at the low areas, you'd have to use a significant amount of fill. And what that translates into is that you'd have steep slopes on either side of the road in order to accommodate those cuts and fills, which creates a domino effect. Then of course, it makes it difficult to access properties that are located on either side of the street. One concern that you typically have with vertical curves and horizontal curves is ensuring that you have adequate sight distance for intersections, median openings, and the like. The engineers who have designed this section of road have designed the median openings and intersections at locations that are appropriately far enough away from the vertical and horizontal curves so that there is adequate sight distance at all those intersections and median openings. So there should not be any safety issue with regard to turning vehicles or pedestrians that might be crossing the road at those intersections. Also, and I guess last and least, because this is in Castle Hills will be maintaining, or the Freshwater District, I should say, will be maintaining this section of Windhaven Parkway, and will be setting the posted speed limit on this section of Windhaven Parkway for the foreseeable future. This same variance was granted, I believe it was earlier this year or maybe late last year, for a section of Standridge Boulevard, which is in Castle Hills Phase 6, also a 4-lane divided boulevard. And the same variance has also been granted a number of times for residential streets within the Castle Hills subdivision. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
So, David, this will be designed to be, how fast did you say, a 35 mile an hour?
Correct.
Four-lane divided boulevard?
Four-lane divided boulevard, but the curves are designed to safely maneuver at 35, understanding that speed limit is typically set by a speed study. But with these types of vertical curves, it's very unlikely that you're going to find traffic traveling much more than 35 miles an hour. It wouldn't be comfortable for most drivers to drive on this road at more than that because of the sharpness of the curves. So the speed limit will be set by speed study after the road has been constructed. I should also mention that Windhaven Parkway on the east side of Josie Lane, which was constructed last year, it was a joint project between the City of Louisville, Castle Hills, and I believe the Billingsley Company, was designed at 40 miles an hour rather than 50 for very similar reasons.
Yeah, I guess a lot of that is dictated, like you said, by the topography and other things. To me, it seems just odd to have such a slow road that's obviously designed to carry so much traffic, 4 lanes, but I guess there's not much you can do with it. There's not much you can do with it. I'm just curious as to how this was ever intended to be anything faster than that. I mean, I'm assuming we always knew that it was fairly steep and curvy and lots of pitch and everything, so I can't believe we ever anticipated we'd get 50 miles an hour out of it anyways. But
well, I mean, as a general rule, I mean, 90 or 95% of the time, at least in Louisville, 4-lane divided boulevards are generally designed at 50 miles an hour or faster. It just happens that in this particular area, I suppose it's possible. Anything's physically possible if you throw enough money at it, but
yeah.
In this particular area of the city, or at least in our ETJ, it's just quite difficult to do that.
Okay. So this is actually then officially a variance to the ordinance?
Yes, it's a variance. If they were following the ordinance, they would design at 50 miles an hour, but because of the extenuating circumstances, they've asked for this variance to do it at 35.
And I don't know why this strikes me as uncomfortable. I don't know why. What type of traffic do we anticipate? Will it be mostly residents that are there, I would assume? I mean, because obviously this connects all the way, basically you're connecting all the way from the edge of Louisville all the way into Austin Ranch and all that. I mean...
Correct. Obviously, when you get toward this end of Windhaven Parkway, you're going to have a significant amount of commercial development as opposed to residential. When you get further to the east, further into Castle Hills, it becomes more residential. And as a matter of fact, once you get south of FM 544, the road narrows down, and for the most part is 4-lane undivided. So even though it's a continuous street all the way through Louisville and cuts through a portion of Carrollton and then through Louisville and then comes back.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Comes back in through Louisville again and then into the Castle Hills. It does go through some residential areas, so frankly, having a relatively low design speed probably isn't an entirely bad thing anyway.
Okay. I don't know. It just makes me, I don't know, it just seems odd that we're building this to sort of connect through, and it's going to be a wide road that'll carry a lot of traffic, and yet it's going to be so slow. I mean, so slow. I mean, 35 is like almost near residential street speed, and it's a big wide road meant to carry traffic, so I don't know. I mean, I understand there's a lot involved with trying to make it any faster, but, if we were saying 45 or something, or 40, it wouldn't sound so bad, but 35 to me, it just, sort of makes me wonder, why is this going to end up being a four-lane road if you're going to be able to have to go 35 miles an hour down it? That's kind of just my thoughts on it. I don't know that they're valid or they mean anything, but it just...
Well, and obviously, your speed is going to, it's one of the factors that will determine the capacity of the street. And obviously, the slower the speed, the less capacity you're going to have. But a four-lane divided road, for the most part, even with the slower speed, is still going to carry a pretty good amount of traffic. And given the fact that both vertical and horizontal curves are designed at 35, there's really not a safety issue involved, which is normally what we're most concerned with.
Okay. Thanks, David. Does anyone else have any comments, questions, concerns, anything?
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Did you ever drive O'Connor Drive down in Las Colinas?
I can't say I have.
35 miles an hour is the right speed for this.
No, I'm not really denying that 35 miles an hour is the right speed. I'm just saying the plan that, what was this road ever planned for? It sounds like it was planned to be a nice, wide road to carry traffic, and all of a sudden we're saying, yeah, but you're not really going to be able to go over 35 miles an hour, which to me doesn't really carry traffic very well. So it's not the fact that we have to resign ourselves to that may be the speed. It's the fact that it seems to me the street was designed to be more than that, and we're not making it what it was designed to be, and that's something a little faster to carry more traffic from way over in Louisville to way over in Plano, and all of a sudden it's this really slow, creepy 35 thing going. So
Yeah,
I think
but you want them to go the safest speed on the road.
No, I'm not denying that. I'm saying that.
And you're talking, I don't know how exactly long this particular stretch is, but you're also talking from Josie Lane to Standridge Road, to Standridge Drive,
Right.
which can't be a very long way, and you don't really want them to go very fast in a short, mile. I would say it'd be less than a mile. I'm not sure. I can't judge how long a mile
Yeah, I would say
is on this.
a mile at the most and probably less.
I would say probably less than that.
And then
And there are going to be two busy intersections in the middle, on each
once they
side.
cross over Josie, it's like Carrollton or Colony or...
Well, once it crosses over Josie, then it's actually, it's still in Castle Hills on the other side of Josie, and then at some point further back to the east, it actually cuts through and divides between the Colony and Louisville. So it kind of follows the city limits through that Boston Ranch area.
And we obviously don't know. Has that already been built out? Is it...
Correct. Like I said, there just last year that was completed. It was a joint project.
But I have been.
That's right.
I have been on the... No, I'm just wondering what it is beyond that. It also seems to concern me that a piece of the road might be 35, and then all of a sudden when you pass over Josie, they split it wide open and everyone's going 50.
Well, on the other side of Josie, the design speed is 40.
Okay, well, it's not too far off. And I guess, as you pointed out, they may design this all out and do a speed study and determine you can go 40, and that's okay. So I don't know what it'll be, but I guess maybe my concern lies with the fact that we're approving something that's basically going to limit entirely what anyone will be able to do with speeds on that road when originally it was designed to be something faster. So. But I'm okay with it, really. It just
And we're acknowledging that designing the road at 35 does limit its capacity to some extent, but the speed isn't your major factor in determining the capacity of the road. It will have some effect, but it's not the major contributing factor.
Okay. Thank you, David. Anyone, anything? Okay, so... This is a regular hearing, so I guess if no one has any other questions or comments, we can have a motion on this?
Make a motion to approve item 4A as presented.
Motion from Karen, do I have a second?
A second.
Second from Bill. This is for item 4A. All those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries on item 4A. Item 5 is public hearing for zoning. We have two cases. Item 5A is consideration of a zone change request from light industrial to medical district on a 4-acre tract located at the northwest corner of High Point Oaks Drive and Vista Ridge Mall Drive, further identified as part of Lot 1, Block A of the High Point Oaks addition. The request is being made by Churchill Residential, Inc., with authorization by the current property owner, High Point Oaks Limited. This is case number PZ 20080408.
The subject property is currently zoned light industrial, and as you can see from the map, the land to the west of it is zoned light industrial. Everything within the High Point Oaks addition, which includes High Point Oaks Drive and Vista Ridge Mall Drive, all that is also light industrial. To the north of State Highway 121 Business is the Convergence property, which is the old, people refer to as the old TI site, which is also light industrial. To the south of this property of the High Point Oaks addition is in Coppell. Coppell did allow a single-family subdivision on their property, sandwiched in between the light industrial and the 121 freeway. The land to the east, on the east side of Denton Tap Road, is also light industrial. The applicant has plans to build a senior housing apartment complex. They have a similar project elsewhere in Louisville on Garden Ridge, just a little south of Main Street, and they build a very nice project, and there's nothing wrong with what they're proposing to do. We do have a concern, as you saw from our staff memo, about this particular location. 4 acres out of this area surrounded totally by light industrial. And from a staff perspective, we feel like that is not suitable zoning to have what in effect is a residential use, people living there in an industrial park. Now, we will admit that the industrial park is likely going to be primarily offices and not so much warehouse and distribution, although there is a 60,000 square foot warehouse and distribution center that has submitted plans for construction to the east of this on Vista Ridge Mall Drive, at the northeast corner of Vista Ridge Mall Drive and High Point Oaks Drive. But the price of the property will keep most of the potential noxious users out of the property. But in looking at the other medical district cases that we've had and that we have currently zoned in Louisville, there are 3 others that are in areas that are light industrial, or the areas around them are light industrial. But in each of those cases, the light industrial is either already developed with offices and things which are compatible with a residential use, or the assisted care place, or the senior housing place, or the nursing home are all part of a residential area. They're either across the street from the residential neighborhood, single-family neighborhood, or apartment neighborhood, or they're next door to it. In this particular case, they are completely isolated from being adjacent to or across the street from any residential area, and so in this particular case, we feel that 4 acres in this location for any kind of residential use is not a suitable use. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Gene? Thank you.
Excuse me, Gene, just to for in terms of clarification, so the primary reason staff is recommending denial is because the predominant light industrial coating that exists around this area.
It's apartments, and it's apartments marketed exclusively for seniors. There are deed restrictions that will stay in place for 40 years that it can only be an apartment complex for seniors. They can't, 3 years down the road, they get to a point where things aren't going well, and they get an offer of somebody to buy it and make it garden apartments for young kids. There are deed restrictions that would prohibit that. So it's got to be used for this purpose for 40 years, and we think is a great purpose, and they do a very nice project. But in this particular location, it's not part of any other residential area, and this is, in the end, a residential use. All of the others that we have in Louisville that are in areas that have light industrial zoning are part of a residential area. They're across the street or adjacent or sandwiched by residential uses. And in this particular case, there's no other residential use nearby. You do have the housing in Coppell, and on an aerial photo, it looks like it's very close. But in reality, if your parents or in-laws are living in the assisted or in the senior housing apartments, and you're living in Coppell and want to go see them, there's no really walking over to see them. For one thing, you have an industrial lot that may be required to build a screening wall that would keep you from getting through. And even if there's no screening wall, it's still uphill to get to them. So it would be a very difficult situation, whereas in all the other locations where we have housing for seniors in medical district, the proximity is such to where if it was your in-laws living in the senior housing and you wanted to walk over and see them, it's across the street or next door or just down the street. And so it is part of a residential area. This is not part of a residential area. Now you do have, I did put in front of you a letter from the Vice President of the High Point Oaks Limited, Tim Slaughter, who indicated he is in support of this zone change request. But we don't have anything against the project that they're doing, and we understand the concerns that they have about they've done all their due diligence, they've got all the approvals from the state for the project, but from a zoning standpoint, we do not feel that this is a good use for any kind of residential in this location.
Okay. Thanks.
Questions?
No. Thank you, Gene. At this time, I'd like to open up item 5A for public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against item 5A, please state your name.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, and
Mr.
sign in
Chairman.
if we have a sign-in. Do we have a sign-in, Gene?
No one's handed one to me. I apologize.
Okay, if you could sign in there, please. Should be.
Is this it up here?
Yeah.
Do you need this to come forward, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, no, just leave it there. Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is Sandy Jacobs, and I am representing Churchill Residential this evening. With me this evening is Tony Sisk, who is part of the management team for Churchill Residential. Tonight, I would like to be able to address the concerns from the city staff and also point out some areas that make this request a little bit more special than your standard rezoning request. Let's see if I can get this here. Okay. Evergreen Communities is really unique. If you haven't seen the other project that's located in Louisville, this is not simply an apartment complex. It's actually a community that values service to their customers. The property, and what makes this different from apartments, is that the property will be restricted to residents 55 years and older. The deed restrictions, as was mentioned before, have a term of 40 years. There's a permanent zoning requirement, there's financing and financial restrictions, and there's also lease restrictions. So it's not like there's going to be children or school buses or any such matter. The quality is really very high here. We're looking at 80% brick for the facility. And as you can see from these pictures, and if you haven't already, this particular project not only is already located in Louisville, but it's also located in Plano. It's also located, one's going up in the Colony and in the Mesquite area and several other areas. And they're really beautiful if you look inside. And you can see as some of these pictures, this is not your typical apartment. This is really a residence. This is really a community. Now, the real question is, why this site? It's important that the site be accessible. If you look at the land site that you have that was presented to you by Mr. Lewis, you'll notice that this is right off of State Highway 121. And it's a key element to Churchill development. Hold on a second here. I don't know where that came from. It's a key element to Churchill development that the people who are visiting these residents, because a good part of these residents really are in their 70s, the people who are visiting these residents have easy access to go ahead and visit them. The other point we want to make is that this property has been vacant for some time, and Gene did point out to you that because of the cost of the property, it is more likely that we're looking at office complex. I think this is really a key element as we discuss this, because if we look at what's ending up surrounding this particular facility and what we're looking at on the ground, I think that it may appear to you to be at least more congenial and more applicable to this type of a product. The development costs exceed $124,000 per unit, and again, this is not an apartment. And again, the main purpose of Churchill is to implement a strategy that includes this type of long-term ownership. Now, the medical district wasn't just chosen haphazardly. As a matter of fact, inside your regulations, it calls for certain areas and certain requirements. The Churchill services actually fit those requirements because they provide physical therapy, occupational therapy, skilled nursing care, speech pathology, medical social work, personal attendant services, wound care, and monthly health and wellness clinics. So again, let me emphasize again, this is not apartment living. Now, this type of facility in some areas may only pay 50% of the taxes, but in this case, Churchill has determined on its own to come in and pay 100% of the taxes. As a matter of fact, if you were to compare this with another light industrial, as we are looking in the city of Louisville right now, this is taken from the appraisal district, you could see here that 35,000 square feet of office building at $95 a foot equates to the same type of taxes that will be paid by this facility. Now, we mentioned before, or it was mentioned before, that there are other facilities already like this within light industrial. Hearthstone Assisted Living is one, and Arbor House Assisted Living. If you look at the aerial zoning map of Hearthstone, you can see here that it is surrounded by light industrial. And granted, there are some R5 across the street, but it's not right next to it. It's actually across the street. But if you look at all around the three corners of the medical district zoning, you'll see that light industrial zoning is already existing there. If you look at the Arbor House zoning, it's very similar. You can see that right next to the Arbor House zoning to the right, you can see that there's an industrial complex there, also by its back door. So we're not looking at a scenario in the past where you had some sort of a medical district that was isolated well out, that in reality at least two or maybe three sides were actually abutting that. Now, if you look at where we're trying to provide this particular district, you can see in pink on the far left where it says proposed medical district. I want you to note here that the Capel houses that are very close to this district, approximate, they're around only 200 feet away. So we're not talking about an area where the residential is that far away from this particular area. This is an actual aerial of the 4 acres. And as you can see by the 4 acres, you can see where the houses are actually located adjacent to this property. To the right of, to the east on Vista Ridge Mall and High Point Oaks is the new property owner that's coming in that's having a development. And I think it's important to note out that this particular development, and this is what's amazing, when residential use such as this comes to the state for approval, I want you all to understand that it's not simply where they buy a site of land or they look into buying a site of land, and then they simply go ahead and determine through the city council as normal, the standard procedure would be, to see whether or not the site can be approved, variance granted, or whatever else may take place. In this particular instance, to build this kind of a quality product so that it's affordable for the residents who qualify in the city of Louisville, that in reality they have to have state approval. Now, there are all kinds of different lots that are chosen in cities all over the state, and the state actually takes those and ranks those. But each individual developer can only buy one piece of property. And this one piece of property in Louisville is so well accepted that it was ranked number 1 in the state at this location for this development. And that is really unusual. This property, because it's so accessible, is ranked number 1. Now, one of the problems that Churchill Residential considered as well was, well, now, if this is going to be in light industrial, are the residents going to have to put up with some kind of a noise factor? Will there be some kind of problem involved? And I want to point out that in your own regulations that were recently amended, there's actually an item in there that says that the noise factor, I believe, cannot be more than 10% of the areas in the road, on the road noise. So in reality, we're not talking about a lot of noise, even if there was some type of small distribution area. But when you look at this property, you'll see that maybe we're not talking about distribution. This is the Vincent product that's coming in very close to this location. If you look at this particular site for the Vincent property, I want you to notice that it is just to the right. This is the High Point Oaks development that we're looking at. And you can see by looking at this development that there is all kinds of, landscaping and so forth all around the facility. In addition to that, remember, our particular development is just on the other side of High Points Drive. It's also abutted by Vista Ridge Mall Drive, which means in reality, they're already protected by 2 streets. So they're not, this particular property is not abutting right up next to, and again, I return to this, it's not abutting right up next to an actual piece of commercial development. It's got a road on the south of it, it's got a road on the east of it as well. And please note the pond there, because one thing that Churchill Development is going to do is actually utilize that pond as part of their landscaping around the project. Let's see here. Hold on a second, sorry, got lost. Now, we're real pleased to provide this letter to you. It's not often in light industrial that you're going to get a letter from the landowner who's developing its property, and those of you who have served and volunteered your time here on P&Z know that this is a real rarity. And as you can see from Mr. Slaughter, he actually states that he supports it, that in addition to that, that he's very impressed with the quality of the project. And it's in his opinion that the product, both in its design and use of material, is high quality. And to his knowledge, he feels like that this would be a good use of medical district zoning. Now, why is Evergreen important to Louisville residents? First of all, Louisville has very few senior housing options. Now, this is a senior housing option, and I'm right on top of that time limit, by the way. When you get to the point where you're no longer capable of living in single-family residential district, and but maybe you can't afford to go one of these fancy 55 and over communities where you have your own house and everything's taken care of, but you can no longer live in your own home. So what are your options? This is the kind of option that you can have in Louisville. And this is an affordable option because of the product that we're looking at. The subject site is important because it's easy access for the family and the families of those residents to visit. But here is a key element. Our current facility at Evergreen at Louisville has a waiting list of over 100 potential residents. A waiting list. If this is not approved, because remember, this is the only site. There is no other site. We can't say, no, Churchill, you can't build it here because we don't particularly want to mix medical district into light industrial, even though we've done it before, but see if you could find another place. There is no other place. And there is no other place because of the process, the lengthy year-long process you have to go to and go through to get this position in the first place. So I'm standing here today to tell you that this is somewhat of a different type of request than your standard request. I'm here to tell you that based on that, this is the best use for this location. This general light industrial area has been vacant for several years. The change of zoning from light industrial to medical district has been an acceptable practice here in Louisville. Evergreen meets all the medical district zoning requirements and is going to pay 100% of the taxes. With the latest changes to the light industrial zoning requirements, noise should not be a factor. The adjacent property owner, High Point Oaks, supports the project next to his development. The state ranked this location as number 1, and there is no other alternative site because of the required process. And finally, the citizens of Louisville want and need this high-quality development based, if nothing else, on the long waiting list. I'm happy to answer any questions for you.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. Does anyone have any questions? Ms. Jacobs? All right, thank you. Do we have anyone else to speak for or against this item on the agenda? Yes, sir. Go ahead. Please go ahead and sign in and state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Tony Sisk, and I'm a principal with Churchill Residential, the developer. And I did want to make one other comment. We had several discriminating daughters and daughter-in-laws that help make decisions for parents in Louisville. We had them go by and look at this site just to make sure that it would be, you know, a good site or okay for them. And there are some discriminating people, and they just said, you know, we understand that it's in, you know, it's in a business park, but the convenience of the location for it outweighs that. You know, we're not concerned about, you know, the business use that would be next door. And this is typical in other cities that are getting built out, like near where our office is in Las Colinas. You drive down Walnut Hill and you have businesses and you know, assisted living, medical, senior living communities and that sort of thing. But I just wanted to add the part about having some decision makers come and look at that site. That's important to us.
Thank you, Mr. Sisk. Do we have anyone else for item 5A, I believe it is? If not, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion from Karen, second from Jim, to close the public hearing on item 5A. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The public hearing is closed. Comments? There has to be some. So I'll look to either end to start with any feelings, gut feelings.
I said that I think this is a fabulous thing. You know, where it's located, everything, I love it. So I have nothing negative to say about this. And I think Louisville needs, not just because I'm 55, but it's something that Louisville needs, and I think it would be a great thing to have in that part of town.
Thank you, Joy.
I'd like to also, in reference to the way this entire establishment is set out and what they've presented to us, and if anybody, and my wife and I recently looked for property like this for my mother-in-law to relocate from Minnesota, and there's very little bit to choose from here in our area. Very little bit. We unfortunately have overlooked the needs of our senior citizens, and I think this is our opportunity to endorse a project like this that looks very strong, the very good use of the property. I think the access to the area is very accessible, so which makes it convenient as well, and to have the endorsement of an adjacent property, I think speaks volumes for it. I'm frankly pleased to see a special presentation like this, and we are long overdue for something for our seniors in our community. I, for one, would support this very strongly. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? Karen, down there, staring.
I have a question for Gene. Mr. Slaughter's 46 acres, is it all over on the High Point Drive and Valley Ridge Mall Drive, in that same area where the distribution center is supposed to be going?
All of the High Point Oaks addition is, if you look at the drawing, is on Vista Ridge Mall Drive and on High Point Oaks Drive. There is a light industrial tract to the west of the High Point Oaks addition that's shown on the map as LI, but all of the High Point Oaks addition is also light industrial. And that he represents that subdivision. There are 2 or 3 of the lots that have sold off and developed on 121, and there's one on Denton Tap that is in process of developing as, I believe, self-storage and some office and retail or restaurant.
So what Mr. Slaughter has control of or had control of is pretty much inside that general area between 121, Denton Tap, Vista Ridge Mall, and High Point Oaks?
Yes, he has control over everything to this line right here,
Okay.
from that line east down to here, up Denton Tap, around 121, back to that line.
Did the property owner to the northwest get notified?
Yes,
Have any comment?
all the property owners within 200 feet were sent a letter, and Mr. Slaughter is the only one we heard from.
Is Vista Ridge Mall Drive going to continue out and hook up with Edmonds, or is it going to dead end right there?
At some point, and it's in the works, but it may be a couple of years away, the Edmonds Lane will come across like this and tie in to the west end of Vista Ridge Mall Drive.
Okay. The southern piece where Vista Ridge Mall Drive is written, that's all light industrial too?
That's correct, down to the southern city limit line, right in here.
Yeah. Okay. And I understand the City of Louisville needs this project or types of projects like this. I know there is a very strong need for these kind of projects. I'm not for sure this is the proper place to put it. I look at this and see light industrial surrounding it. And granted, there is residential right to the south in Coppell, but I'm not for sure I would want my parents, my grandparents living in an area that is surrounded by storage buildings, self-storage to office buildings, to distribution centers. I'm not sure. I know the building would probably be substantial enough to block most of that noise out, but something about older people have much, sometimes, not always, have much more sensitive hearing to those problems than someone of my age. I said sometimes now, Bill, sometimes.
You can't hear it down here.
It depends on how hard that hearing aids turn up. No, I'm just kidding. I apologize. But I'm not for sure this is the right place in the city of Louisville for this project. Now, if it had been on the south side of Vista Ridge Mall Drive, I don't know if I would have been against it as much, but I'm not for sure, since it's going to be completely surrounded, possibly, by light industrial, that I could support it. There's my comment. I actually said it in public, on record. Are you crazy?
On TV.
That's debatable.
All right.
Comment.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Bill.
I've been told many times in my professional life that this is spot zoning, and I don't like spot zoning. Once you lose the light industrial, you never get it back for 40 years. That's the way it's set up. This area is starting to take off big time because I drive by there every morning, and we have quite a bit of construction going on. There will be more in the future. I think that it's starting to get hot down there, and so I don't feel like medical zoning is the way to go at this point in time, so I will not be in favor of it.
Thank you, Bill. Alvin, any comments? I have a list running, so no one's getting away with anything. No comments? No feelings? No questions? Nothing? Thank you, Alvin. James, anything from down there that you want to speak to? Okay. Let's see here what I had written down. Jacobs, could you describe for me, you had talked about one of the factors in the state, one of the factors that made this so appealing was the easy access. Are we basically just talking the roads that are around it? In other words, having Vista Ridge Mall Drive and 121 and
That's
bypass
correct. And that's one of the main reasons that, the state, I'm sure, helped this rank to be as high as it is because of the access.
And why is that so important? Can you educate me? I understand that, to me, I don't know this process at all, but to me it seems like the big ticket items that would rank it really high are like public transportation right there, a grocery store that the folks can walk to, or that their children can drive them, down the street to, and this doesn't really have it. So that's why I'm curious as to why that's such a big...
Well, let me add that, and I understand your question, Mr. Chairman, let me add that keep in mind that this particular facilities does have transportation to those areas. That's number one. Number two, even though the minimum age is 55, in reality, the majority of those residents who live there are in their 70s. And to be quite frank with you, they're not going to walk to the grocery store. They're not going to, the majority of them are obviously had to leave their residential homes to live there in the first place. So they're not in a physical capacity to go ahead and utilize the scenario where they're going to go out and walk about. So the reality of the users of this, if you really look at the users, it's the sons and the daughters that are visiting their parents that are the users, and they're the ones who really benefit from the access. I don't believe that noise will be a factor here, and I also feel very strongly about the fact that the way this is going to develop with the office complex, and let's keep in mind that the developer, the landowner, who owns all the property that was pointed out all around this, is saying they totally support this project. Mr. Price, I understand what you mean about spot zoning. I've been around the government table a couple of times, and I do understand what you're saying, and I'm not trying to argue with you, but I can assure you that if we didn't have that developer, the landowner, sitting there and saying this is a good development, then I would question this. But with that, Mr. Price, I would like to encourage you to look at this in a manner that's a little bit different. As I said, this is unusual because we don't have the flexibility to look at someplace south of this. This is the only site. We're not like an average commercial developer who will come in and maybe could choose to buy this site or this site or this site. There is not that opportunity. It's this or nothing. And thank you. Any other questions? I'm sorry.
Yes, I do, please. And that was also something I wrote down. I understand the process sounds like it's not an easy process, but what makes it to the point where there is no other site? Because it sounds to me like you're saying that if we recommend this, approval or denial to the city council, or whatever happens, and it's ultimately taken off the table, that you have no other place in Louisville you can do that.
What occurs is that the process takes an entire year.
Okay.
So every year there's different sites that's provided. If this site does not get approved for the zoning change, then this drops off, and whoever was number 2 comes up. So when it comes back a year from now, this site won't be available, and there's no guarantee whatsoever that even if there is another site in Louisville that's chosen, that it would be considered or even be in the top number 1 slot. Remember, there's only a very few of them that are approved at the top because, as you well know, there's not that much money anymore for this type of housing. So if you don't get in the top 5 slots in the state, odds are you're not going to get the kind of housing to begin with. So if this is removed from the table, there's the outlook, to have this happen again, twofer, as we might call it, is unusual.
So you're saying there is a list that exists somewhere, and if this drops off the list, then somewhere...
Let me give you a copy of that list.
Okay. Somewhere else you're saying, like in Addison, there's site number 2, and the state will say, okay, you can build this on site number 2. Is this a list for your business?
No, this is a list from the state, and actually, site number 2 is in the colony.
Okay.
It's just that there are certain criteria that are ranked, and this is really kind of a one-shot opportunity to get the financing, and it's ranked number 1. I mean, the deal will get done if this zoning is approved. Also, I was going to answer your question about location conveniences. It's really proximity convenience to neighborhoods. The Walmart is right across the street, the mall, proximity to roads that can get to neighborhoods very quickly. That was really the biggest factor in that location.
Okay, pieces are starting to come together a little bit. So this relates to financing also?
Yes.
So because this site is so highly ranked, it will be subsidized by the state to build this facility there for seniors?
That's correct. It's and that's what the end result will let
It's
Tony
not subsidized. It's just there's a limited per capita amount of financing. It's all private capital. It's just there's a limited amount of funds that can be invested in any state. It's a per capita limitation, but it's private financing.
You mean that a private can invest in this type of...
It's private, it's big banks and corporations put up the equity, and then it has conventional debt.
Okay, thank you. I think that answers my other question, too, about why this was ranked number 1. Okay, so... Okay, I think I got it. Thank you.
Is there any other questions? I'm happy to answer.
Ms. Jacobs, since you're up here right now, can you also address some of what Mr. Slaughter is pointing out are the top high-quality use of the design and use of materials? Mm-hmm. And as we view some of the renditions of what the product is going to be, it appears to me that there's quite the buffer that surrounds the entire complex and the entire proposed process here that might address some of the noise concerns that are being addressed by some of my fellow commissioners. Can you address that a little bit more?
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. I don't know if this will strike up the band here anytime soon, but let me address that. I kind of touched on that with the pond. What I wanted to do is show you this one slide again, if I can get this up. But basically, if you look at that structure again, remember where the pond was, and I'll get to this slide in a minute. If it pleases the Planning and Zoning Commission, because there is concern about this, my client is ready to look at some type of a fencing in addition to what would normally be the landscaping, so that we can incorporate the pond and everything else around the facility. If that's what will make a difference here, and I'll have Tony address that. Yeah, thank you, Tony. Let's bring that forward. Why don't you show them what we're talking about, Tony? Here, let me hold it up.
What we're talking about here is we would be having to put a surface stone screening wall right here. This is intended to be the light industrial that is to the west of this, but we're agreeing to putting up a surface stone screening wall if there was any kind of industrial block. This we think would be real nice, medical research type offices. It would be nice to look at. We have the pond right here, so we don't like to think that there's a screening wall there, front of the screening wall out here, so we're fine with that.
We would be happy to accept that as a contingency in your motion, if that would help. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Has anybody been in the unit that's at Garden Ridge and Main Street, actually been in it?
I have not been in it. I look close to them, but they look very, very nice.
It is fabulous. It is its own campus, okay? I mean, I was ready to stay when I walked in there. It's gorgeous. It's lovely. Really, it is.
A few more years, you can do that, right?
Well, right now I can do that. But, I mean, I just think these people build an excellent quality product, a secure product. It's a place where I felt secure. I thought, this is a place I would feel secure living in. if I was, in my 70s. And I think that's what they're trying to do. And I think with, 100 people on a waiting list, we need to look at this seriously. It's something every city is going to need.
Thank you, Joy. Does anyone else have any additional comments, feedback, questions, anything before we sort of summarize this whole deal? James, you?
What is the proposed completion date if this goes forward?
Proposed completion date, the first residents would move in the fall of '09, and probably would be final completion would be kind of the winter '09-10. You would go over into 10 in terms of the actual final construction completion, but it's probably take about 12, 13 months to build it. We may finish it by the end of '09.
Thank you. Anything else from anyone? Okay, well, before we decide to take a motion, I think this one is a really difficult one. I understand the concern with the spot zoning. Obviously, I think that can be a problem in some cases. I don't know. I'm not 100% convinced it'll be in this case. I haven't been doing this for many, many years like some of our city staff and others, so I don't know the problems of spot zoning. I don't know if this not becoming light industrial for 40 years is going to be a problem. I don't really even know if, obviously we can't always guarantee what's going to come in some of those light industrial spots down there. It does seem to me to weigh in a little favorably that the owner of all of that land, I think you confirmed, right, Karen? Everything all around there? The slaughter owns all that land?
Except for the one piece to the left.
Right. So, it seems to me that with someone like that being on board, I would hope they would be, if they're recommending these folks as a good neighbor, I would hope they would be a good neighbor and try to do things with their area that are compatible with this. I think one of the really difficult issues with this is it's not like we can, put it back out there and say, well, talk with the city. There's got to be someplace really great, because the process doesn't really allow for them to look for anywhere else that's really great. So it seems to me it comes down to weighing the sort of the spot zoning. It's sort of surrounded by light industrial with the, this is pretty much going to be it for this particular project. So do we think it's going to be valuable enough to put it here despite the fact that normally we'd have reservations or not? And I don't know that I'll be able to sway that vote one way or the other, but that's just sort of my feedback. I don't think I'm too concerned about the noise either. I think it's important enough to sort of make a little bit of a difference on what we would normally vote, or recommending rejecting it to the city council and possibly losing the deal altogether. I guess I will reiterate, and Gene can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just a recommendation to the city council, so whether we approve or deny this, it still goes before the city council, and the city council still has the final say on it. The only difference, I believe, is if it's denied by this board, it takes a little bit stronger vote at the city council to get it to pass. So obviously the city council is a big, important selling point in this, and selling them on it even more so than us. So but they do take the recommendation seriously, and they will look at it, obviously, depending on what we state. So that's all I have. Does anyone else have anything before we put it to a vote? Okay, if not, I will accept a motion to recommend approval of this item 5A to City Council, or a motion to recommend denial. Either way.
I'd like to make a motion to pass this item as presented, with the contingency of adding the screening wall to ensure the noise level and the area of the light industrial is sectioned off from the rest of this particular complex.
Gene, you look like you have a comment.
The contingency, you can't really have a contingency with the zoning, but you can acknowledge their offer to do the screening wall on the west side, and include that in your motion.
With the acknowledgement that the builder, the developer, would include the screening wall at the designated spot.
Okay. See if I can recap that. We have a motion from Jim to approve item 5A, acknowledging that the developer has offered up the potential of building a noise buffer, maybe around some of the light industrial, in case that becomes an issue or appears to possibly be an issue. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
I have a second from Joy. All those in favor of approving item 5A, recommending to the City Council, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those,
Show of hands.
sorry, let me continue, and then I will. All those against the motion, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Okay, and did I have an abstain, James, did I?
I said aye.
You said aye? Okay, so can I see the ayes, because I believe we had 4, and the nays, please? 3. We had 3, so item 5A is approved for presentation to the City Council by this board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And while they are dismantling some of their equipment, item 5B is consideration of a zone change request from general business to public use on a 6.06-acre tract located at 900 South Mill Street, further identified as Lot 1, Block A of the Payless Cashways Edition, Section 1. The request is being made by Louisville Independent School District, the current property owner. This is case number PZ 20080616.
One moment. No technical difficulty. Computer unplugged.
This is the property commonly known as 84 Lumber, or the old Payless Cashways store. It's been vacant for quite some time. We've had a number of users who have called and asked about the possibility of putting a variety of things there, from used car lots to self-service storage to boat repairs, other things. But nobody has pulled the trigger on it. Well, the school district has bought the property, and the zoning ordinance allows public governmental agencies to go in any zoning classification. So the school district owning it and using it is not a problem. They can do that regardless of the zoning. But they do have to follow the rules and regulations within the zoning and the development standards. And in the general business zoning, the limitation is for 10% of the total lot to be used for outside storage. In public use, there is no 10% limitation. In either case, any outside storage has to be screened from view. So the school district plans on using this building and facilities for book storage and for overflow bus parking. If during the summer they park buses there that are not being used because they're not running as many buses, and this is where they park some of the buses, if they park on more than 10% of the property, then the general business zoning would not allow them to put more buses on it. If they zone it public use, as long as they screen it off from view, they would be able to park buses on more of the property. So that's the basic reason for the zoning request. Staff has no problems with the request going to public use. There are representatives from the school district here to answer any questions, should you have any.
Thank you, Gene.
Questions?
Any questions for Gene? Comments? Okay. I'll open the public hearing on item 5B. Anyone wishing to speak for or against item 5B, please step forward, sign in, and state your name.
Thank you. I'm Vaughn Bucher with G&A Consultants, 111 Hillside Drive here in Louisville, and we're the engineers and surveyors for the Louisville School District on this project. As Gene mentioned, the school district has purchased the property, and really our request for the rezoning is just to just to clarify the school district's need, we came into to a staff meeting, met with staff, explained what our intentions were to use the existing building as a book depository or a book, school book, textbook, kind of a storage area, which is no problem. We can do that. We also indicated to the staff that our intention was to potentially park school buses there. And then the question came up, okay, are they going to be stored school buses, or are they going to be active school buses? Well, they're going to be active school buses. Well, then, what about during the summer months? There may be 2 or 3 months when they might not be quite so active, and then it became a definition of, okay, what's active? How long does a bus have to be stored in one place or not moved, through the summer months? Does it become storage? So we kind of volunteered and agreed with staff that by zoning it public use, we would get over that and wouldn't have to worry about what the definition of that was, and we can still use it the way we intend to use it, and if screening devices are necessary, we're going to comply with that at that point. Today, the main plans are to renovate the existing building for book storage, and then the buses will come along as the need occurs, but it's a reality that it's probably going to occur as the district continues to expand. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions. I'm certainly in support of the project. With me tonight is Mark Ross with the Louisville Independent School District, if you have any additional questions of him.
Thank you, Mr. Bucher. Anyone else to speak for or against item 5B? If not, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Motion by Karen.
Second.
Second by Jim to close the public hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Public hearing is closed. Do we have any questions or comments for staff or for Mr. Bucher or anyone?
Love a good school bus parking lot. That sounds great.
Is the chain link fence, is that a temporary security measure? Is it?
That's
Okay.
existing. That would have been existing.
The question is the new chain link fence security? Yes, sir, that is. That was put up for security to prevent vandalism and cut through traffic and other things. Well, the school district currently has people in there kind of fixing up the inside of that building, and at night they weren't able to secure it, so that's a security fence. And if we go forward with the buses, we'll put the proper screening fence up in place of that.
Excuse me also, does the renovation include, in that books will be stored at this facility, does the renovation include any kind of updating of the fire sprinkler system at all? Or is it adequate the way that it is?
I'm going to address, hopefully staff can help me. When we talked with staff, it was indicated that if the footprint of the building was not changed, then the existing structure was adequate for book storage. Is that the way you remember, David and Jean?
It's the fire marshal's call ultimately, but they would be required to comply with the rules in effect for the use that they're doing.
Yeah, we're perfectly willing, and the city's seen what we're doing. There's a fire hydrant right outside the south side of that building, and if we needed to sprinkler it, we'll do whatever we need to. But I remember at the staff meeting that if we weren't changing the footprint of the building, that there probably wouldn't be a sprinkler requirement.
Thank you.
Where's the book storage now?
The school district has several areas, and the need, or the books that are coming here, are in the second floor of the Bolin Administration Building on Garden Ridge in Maine. If I'm get a nod from Mr. Ross. I think that's where the bulk of the books are going to come over here, and then they're going to turn some of that space at the Bolin Center into administrative
Does this will
offices.
make it more centralized then?
I'll let Mark address that maybe. It's in the need of the school district to get more administration space in the Bolin Center, and book storage can go here, and it's a pretty good location for the school district. Obviously, the buses can go east or west. It's in the middle of really the big picture, the Colony, the Carrollton, Louisville Flower Mound, so it is pretty centrally located.
Utopia. For all the
Bus and book Utopia?
Yeah. Can't think of it.
Now we know it's almost 8 o'clock.
That's a good name.
Any other questions?
Anything else? Thank you. Okay, do we have any other questions or comments on this for staff or for the gentleman in the back there from either side? If not, do we have a motion on item 5B? Or may I have a motion on 5B, please?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve item 5B as presented.
I have a motion from Jim. Second, please.
Second?
Second from Joy on item 5B. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, sorry. Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Item 6 on the agenda is other business. Staff, do we have any other business? Anyone up here, any other business? No other business? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. A
Second.
motion from Bill, and a second from Karen to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Meeting's adjourned.